What if the moment you feel most abandoned is exactly when your inner power begins to awaken? Why do your efforts vanish into silence, like stones swallowed by a river's depths? Maybe it's not failure, but the forge of resilience. When you're one breath away from surrender, could that be the exact edge where your real transformation begins? I've written about this feeling many times before, the stubborn, quiet ache that no matter how hard you try, the world seems to ignore you. It's as if every ounce of energy you pour into something disappears without a sound, like a stone sinking into the bottom of a deep, unresponsive river. There are days when your willpower doesn't just fade, it evaporates. Each step forward feels heavier than the last, as though life has become a mountain you never agreed to climb. Hopes don't just falter, they shatter before your eyes. But according to the Stoics, these very moments, the ones we wish we could escape, are not empty. They are essential. They are the raw, burning material from which strength is shaped. Like steel tempered in a raging fire, your spirit too is forged in the heat of suffering. Sometimes, it feels like you're smashing your head against a stone wall, powerless, in pain, utterly exhausted, and yet, that's where transformation begins. This isn't just a fleeting emotional reaction. What you're feeling has a name: learned helplessness. It's a psychological condition where repeated failure leads us to believe that no matter what we do, nothing will change. We surrender, not because we're weak, but because we've been conditioned to expect disappointment. But Stoic wisdom cuts through this illusion. It teaches us that our identity is not shaped by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. It's not our circumstances that define us, it's our courage. In this video, we'll explore 7 Stoic principles, starting from the science of learned helplessness to the timeless call of memento mori. A reminder of mortality that transforms defeat into drive. Together, we'll reframe the feeling of wanting to give up and turn it into a fire that burns steady and strong. And if you're standing at the edge right now, if you're just moments away from letting go, please stay. This message is written for you. You might be closer to discovering your deepest strength than you've ever been. In the next section, we'll begin with the first principle, recognizing learned helplessness, and how to break free from its invisible grip. We explored how those moments when you feel most defeated might actually be the start of your transformation. Now, let's look at where this helplessness begins, and how deeply it can shape our lives if left unchecked. Psychologist Martin Seligman, a pioneer in his field, once conducted an experiment that forever changed the way we understand human behavior. It was controversial, even cruel, but deeply revealing. He placed dogs inside enclosed cages and exposed them to small, controlled electric shocks. At first, these dogs reacted as any living creature would. They panicked, yelped, and desperately searched for a way out. They fought with everything they had to escape the pain. But over time, something heartbreaking happened. After repeated failures, after realizing that no action changed the outcome, they stopped trying. Even when the cage doors were later opened, freedom just a few steps away, they didn't move. They lay there, still, unresponsive, as if their spirit had already left them. This is what psychologists call learned helplessness, a mental state where the brain concludes, nothing I do matters. It stores that belief like a reflex. And from that point on, effort feels pointless. Resistance feels useless. The mind accepts defeat long before the body stops trying. This phenomenon doesn't only exist in labs. It plays out in our real lives. When life hits us with repeated disappointments, failing an exam, getting fired, being betrayed, something inside us begins to shut down. We start telling ourselves a quiet, devastating lie: what's the point? Dreams fade. Motivation disappears. And we retreat into a prison that doesn't have physical walls, but is just as real. A prison built from disillusionment and self-doubt. The world, once full of paths and possibility, now looks like a maze of dead ends. Every turn seems tainted by past failures. But here's the true tragedy: it's not that we've failed. It's that we've surrendered internally, often without even realizing it. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They knew the real battleground wasn't outside, it was within. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful emperors and philosophers, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't just a feel-good quote, it's a roadmap. Because when we feel helpless, we're not truly losing to life. We're losing to the thoughts we allow to dominate our minds. And that is something we can reclaim. Understanding how learned helplessness works is the first step toward breaking it. Just like recognizing a mirage in the desert, when you see it for what it really is, you stop chasing it. In the same way, when we understand that our feelings of worthlessness are conditioned, not destiny, we take back power. They're just old reflexes. And old reflexes can be rewired. This is where Stoicism becomes more than theory, it becomes a practice. It teaches us to draw a clear line between what we can and cannot control. We can't control the past. We can't control other people's onions. And we certainly can't control every outcome. But we can control how we respond. We can choose our actions. And we can decide to believe in the value of effort, even when results aren't immediate. That's where true freedom begins, not by changing the world around us, but by mastering the world within us. Next, we'll look at how reclaiming even a single step, one small act of courage, can begin to undo the grip of helplessness, and what it truly means to rise again. Earlier, we uncovered the roots of learned helplessness and how Stoic philosophy empowers us to break its grip. Now, we take it one step further, into reclaiming control, one choice at a time. The very moment you choose to stand up, one more time, you reclaim something precious, sovereignty over your own life. That choice, however small, shatters the illusion that you are powerless. You begin to see through the sweet trap of learned helplessness, the one that whispers, "It's easier to give up." But what's easier isn't always what's right. And it's rarely what transforms us. The Stoics knew this truth well. They didn't chase comfort, they chased clarity. As Epictetus once said, "The essence of growth is not that everything goes smoothly, but that we can face adversity without losing ourselves." Think about that. True growth isn't about avoiding the storm, it's about learning how to walk through it with steady steps. The more you confront your fears, the more you keep moving forward, even after failures, the more you shape a kind of inner resilience that no one can ever take away from you. Not people. Not circumstances. Not fate itself. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, if I gave up today, what would all my past efforts mean? Would all the pain I've endured, every late night, every silent tear, every tough choice, just vanish into nothing? Or could it be that the road you're on, as thorny as it feels, is exactly the path that's shaping the person you were always meant to become? To the Stoics, pain is not a punishment. Failure is not a flaw. Every hardship is raw material, waiting to be shaped. And like a sculptor working with stubborn marble, if you keep chiseling with patience and intention, what emerges isn't just survival. It's something uniquely powerful. Something no one else can copy, your personal strength. To overcome learned helplessness, we don't need to conquer the world. That's too much. That's not the point. We need only to conquer the moment right in front of us, the one where our instincts scream at us to lie down, to quit, to shrink. Taking a single trembling step in that moment. That is an act of defiance. That is strength. And with each of those steps, the fragile version of you, the one who doubted, who hesitated, who felt small, begins to dissolve. In their place emerges someone freer, someone stronger. So remember this. Every time you feel like giving up, you are likely standing just inches away from a breakthrough. Every pain. It's not a curse, it's a personal invitation. An invitation to rise. To become the version of yourself that only adversity can build. And when all else feels dark and uncertain, when the road ahead disappears into fog, whisper this to yourself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Then take a breath. And take the next step. Up next, we'll dive into Principle 2, how to divide control. Because knowing what belongs to you, and what never did, is the key to calm, focus, and unshakable resilience. Previously, we learned how reclaiming even a single step in the face of despair can shift everything. Now, we go deeper into where that strength truly comes from, by narrowing our focus to what's actually within our control. Miracles don't always come with thunder or applause. Sometimes, they grow in silence. When we stop fighting the world and start mastering our small, steady circle of control. Imagine this: an athlete, once a symbol of grace and power, now lies collapsed from injury. His name once echoed in arenas. Now, even walking across a room feels like dragging boulders tied to his ankles. He aches to heal overnight. He dreams of returning to competition, muscles roaring back to life. But none of it, is within his power right now. What is? Getting up. Every single day. Dragging himself to physical therapy, gritting his teeth through dull, stabbing pain. Showing up, not for the cameras, not for applause, but for the quiet act of rebuilding. No shortcuts. No miracles. Just deliberate, disciplined progress. And through that slow agony, something extraordinary begins to form. Not just a body in recovery, but a soul in transformation. A deeper victory emerges. One not made of gold medals or headlines, but of self-mastery. He doesn't just return stronger physically. He returns unbreakable in spirit. And it's not just athletes. Think of J.K. Rowling. A single mother, jobless, scraping by on welfare. Nights were freezing. Her apartment was dim and drafty. But clutched in her hands, tightly, was the manuscript for Harry Potter. She faced rejection not once or twice, but 12 times. 12 doors slammed. 12 silent no's. Loneliness could have consumed her. The humiliation could have drowned her. But she didn't collapse into helplessness. She didn't try to control the publishers. She didn't chase approval. Instead, she focused inward, within her small circle of control. She rewrote. She refined. She submitted again. And on the 13th try, one door opened. Not because of magic. Not because of luck. But because she held the line. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Epictetus wasn't just delivering poetic quotes, he was giving us a survival manual. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. When we feel overwhelmed, frustrated, or furious, those words become a compass. They force us to ask. How much of this suffering is real? And how much of it comes from gripping things we were never meant to control? Letting go isn't surrender. It's strategy. By turning our attention inward, toward what we can shape, our thoughts, our efforts, our choices, we create the conditions for real change. In the next section, we'll explore how this mindset doesn't just ground us, it empowers action, even when there's no clear path ahead. Because Stoic courage isn't about knowing the out. Last time, we discovered the quiet power of staying rooted in what we can control, and how that focus, over time, can transform our outcomes. Now we ask the tougher question: what do you do when even clarity isn't enough? When we train ourselves to stop reaching for what doesn't belong to us, to shrink our need for control to only what lives within, we stop reacting like puppets pulled by the chaos of the world. We stop flailing in the storm, and instead, become steady-handed warriors, holding tight the reins of our own fate. And here's the paradox. The more we release our grip on what we can't command, the stronger we actually become. When we stop trying to control outcomes, approval, or chance, and instead pour everything into our mindset, our discipline, our effort, we begin to transform life itself. Even its failures, rejections, and losses become something else entirely, they become part of a journey we truly own. It's like climbing a mountain in complete darkness. You can't clear the fog. You can't see the peak. But you can plant your next step with care. That's where your strength lies, not in seeing the future, but in choosing to move anyway. You save your energy. You stop battling things that drain you. And then, almost quietly, something begins to shift. By nurturing that small, powerful circle of what is within you, the very results that once seemed out of reach begin to materialize. Slowly. Gradually. But unmistakably. Still, there's a harder test ahead. Harder even than learning what to let go of. It's this: how do you act when the way forward is completely unclear? You know you're supposed to keep going. You know endurance matters. But on your darkest days, when hope feels hollow, when logic fails, when faith is all but gone, how do you move? That is the next lesson. And it's not for the faint of heart. In the next section, we'll explore what it means to take action when no outcome is guaranteed. A powerful Stoic lesson on becoming a flame that refuses to go out, even in the wind. Let's begin with principle number 3. Have the courage to act when you see no way out. Take Mark, for example. He went bankrupt, twice. He watched bills pile up, his savings vanish, his confidence unravel. Twice, life knocked him flat. Others in his position would have given up, would have turned their back on the struggle. But Mark didn't. He started over. A third time. No headlines. No cheering crowd. Just a small, struggling company that no one paid attention to. No guarantees. Just a quiet commitment, improve by 1% each day. And from those tiny, humble efforts, a new foundation began to rise. One that was sturdier than anything he had built before. Mark wasn't fearless. He wasn't born with superpowers. He had doubts. He had sleepless nights. He knew anxiety. But he also knew something that Stoic philosophy has been teaching for thousands of years. Do not accept helplessness. In the Stoic tradition, this kind of unyielding spirit is called Andreia. The courage to act in uncertainty, without promises, without guarantees, and without the comforting light at the end of the tunnel. Seneca once put it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's a simple statement, but if you let it sink in, it cuts deeper than almost anything else. Because it means this. You might not control the world. But you can always choose how you walk through it. Up next, we'll discover how fear exaggerates the future, and how mastering our inner response is what sets the unshakable apart from the overwhelmed. It's about moving anyway. In the last section, we saw how courage isn't about certainty, it's about choosing to move when the outcome is unknown. Now we explore what often holds us back, not reality, but the stories we tell ourselves. Here's a hard truth. Most of our fear, anxiety, and despair doesn't come from what actually happens. It comes from the scenarios we imagine. The exaggerated disasters we build in our own minds. When we encounter difficulty, our instinct is rarely calm. We tend to spiral. We project the worst-case outcomes. This will ruin everything. I won't recover from this. It's over. But in reality, the vast majority of those fears, they never happen. And even when they do, they're often far less catastrophic than we anticipated. Life does challenge us, but not always in the ways our minds predict. Think about this. A new mother, worn thin by exhaustion and anxiety, barely surviving sleepless nights. Will she break under the pressure? Or will she embrace each chaotic moment as an expression of fierce, imperfect love? A student just failed their university entrance exam. Will they let that single failure define their self-worth? Or will they treat it as a detour, an opportunity to grow, to realign, to rise? Stoicism reminds us of something powerful. Right action doesn't need immediate results to be meaningful. Even when the path ahead is unclear, even when the fog hasn't lifted, choosing to continue forward is, in itself, a victory. You might be wondering. But what if I've tried everything and I'm still exhausted? What if nothing's changing? The Stoics never promised comfort. They never said, everything will be fine. What they did say is far more honest, and far more freeing. Life is uncertain. Always. The goal isn't to make life obey your plans. It's to train your mind to stay grounded, to hold fast to your values, even when everything around you feels like it's collapsing. As Epictetus once said, if you only act when success is guaranteed, you are not truly free. Freedom doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from the courage to act anyway, to do the right thing, even when you have no promise it will work. And when you rise again, like Mark did, not for show, not for glory, but because you refuse to give in, you're not just rebuilding a career, or a project, or a day. You're forging something much deeper, your soul. One of the most beautiful paradoxes of Stoicism is this. The darker the space, the more powerful the light you carry becomes. The more doubt surrounds you, the braver your choices become. And every single time you silence the voice that says, I've lost, and instead whisper, I'll try again, you win a battle greater than any you'll ever fight on the outside. It's the battle to master yourself. And when the darkest day comes, when the world feels like fog, and your footing feels uncertain, remember this. One step. Just one rational decision. That can change the entire trajectory of your life. You don't need a flawless plan. You don't need a miracle. You only need the courage to move forward. Even if it's just one trembling step. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you were sure you would fall, yet somehow chose to rise instead? If so, share it in the comments. That one story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you want to keep growing with us, keep building your inner courage, don't forget to subscribe. Join our Stoic community. This is where we train, not just for life's challenges, but for the wisdom to rise above them. In the next part, we'll look at how obstacles, instead of stopping us, can become the very road we explored how a single step, even in the dark, can realign your path. Now we turn to a deeper Stoic truth. What if the very things blocking you are the path themselves? Principle number 4, rethink. Turn obstacles into paths. There are days when we collapse halfway through the journey, not because we're weak, but because everything feels impossibly heavy. Each effort feels like ramming into a stone wall. Nothing budges. In those moments, frustration floods in. Exhaustion takes over. Helplessness screams inside your chest. And then, almost instinctively, we whisper the words. I can't. It seems innocent, even honest. But that phrase? It's dangerous. It quietly seals shut the final doors still open to us. But imagine, just imagine, pausing for a single breath and replacing that thought with one simple phrase. I will try. That shift may seem small, but it changes everything. It's not about empty positivity. It's about giving yourself permission to continue, to fight even when the battlefield is scorched, even when you feel like there's nothing left to give. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Let that sink in. What blocks you doesn't stop you, it redirects you. Picture a Roman soldier, knee-deep in mud. His shield is cracked. His sword, dull. He faces enemies who outnumber him. The logical thought is, we're finished. But the Stoic mind doesn't see doom, it sees a test. Not of physical strength, but of inner character. Of resolve. Of the ability to remain grounded, even when everything around him is chaos. We don't need to be warriors to live this truth. Think about someone who loses their job. If they call themselves a failure, that identity begins to harden. But what if they called it a turning point instead? A chance to learn coding. Or design. Or storytelling. What if they renamed the moment? Then it's not the end. It's a beginning in disguise. Here's the truth. We may not control what happens to us, but we absolutely control how we name it. And the labels we attach to pain? They matter. Be careful with them. Call something a dead end, and it becomes one. Call it a detour, and suddenly, the road continues. Failure can become a mentor. Rejection can become redirection. It all depends on how you choose to see it. Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, proved this in his research on learned helplessness. When people believe that they have no control, they stop trying. But when they even slightly believe their actions can influence outcomes, they grow more resilient. Stoicism grasped this long before science gave it a name. The Stoics didn't wish for easier lives, they trained their minds to be stronger. They didn't wait for a smooth path, they learned to walk on uneven ground. Because when we stop fearing failure, when we accept every stumble as part of the process, we stop obsessing over how fast we're moving. And start valuing the fact that we are still moving, period. In the next section, we'll explore how connecting with others, not isolation, is the fuel that helps us keep moving, even on the days when our own willpower runs dry. Walk, and how Stoic transformation begins the moment we say, "This is the way." In the last section, we learned how shifting your perspective on obstacles can redefine not just the challenge, but who you become because of it. Now, we turn to a powerful truth: you were never meant to walk this path alone. Take a student who has just failed their entrance exam. It hurts. It stings. The shame, the uncertainty, the fear of what comes next, these are real. But this moment does not have to be the end of their story. In fact, it could be the turning point, the nudge that leads them toward a path that better matches their passion, their values, and their true talents. Sometimes the door that closes only reveals the one you were meant to walk through. Or consider a mother, newly postpartum, drowning under the weight of pressure, exhaustion, and the crushing illusion of needing to be perfect. From the outside, no one may see it. But on the inside, she's battling through a storm of doubt and silent suffering. And yet, if she can recognize that even in her lowest state, she is still trying to love, still choosing to show up, then she will realize something extraordinary. The greatest battles are often fought in silence. And quiet perseverance is sometimes the loudest form of victory. When we change how we see obstacles, we change how we see ourselves. We stop reacting like victims. We start evolving as warriors. We grow more flexible. More grounded. More resilient. And suddenly, life, no matter how brutal, no longer feels like a relentless enemy. It becomes something else entirely, a teacher. Each hardship becomes a lesson. Every fall, a chapter. So don't give up. Don't collapse. If you hit the ground, use it. Let the ground itself become your springboard. Push back. Rise higher. Look your challenge straight in the eyes and say, "You will not stop me. You are not my prison, you are the path I must walk." Principle number 5, connect and train your mind with the community. There are days when our internal world feels like a battlefield after the war. Motivation disappears. Willpower cracks and crumbles into pieces too small to gather. And in that emotional wreckage, instinct often tells us to shut down. To retreat. To close off. To wallow in disappointment alone. But Stoic wisdom says otherwise. It is precisely in those darkest moments that we need connection the most. Not solitude. But the warm, steady reach of another human hand pulling us back from the edge. A reminder that we are seen. That we are not alone. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, didn't write letters to Lucilius just to sound wise. He wrote them as an act of reflection, connection, and spiritual accountability. Each message was like a bridge. An invisible thread linking two souls committed to growth, one word at a time. And in our modern world, where loneliness runs rampant and competition overshadows compassion, reviving this practice is more necessary than ever. Find a group. A circle. A single friend. Join a 30-day journey not to compete, but to train together. Be honest. Share your struggles. Set your goals. Commit together. Not to impress each other, but to grow side by side. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Life isn't just about surviving. It's about feeling, thinking, connecting. And through those connections, we find something we often lose. A reflection of our truest self. Not perfect, but honest. Still moving. Still striving. And when someone speaks about their own breaking point, when they admit they almost gave up but chose not to, you realize something powerful. You are not alone. You never were. In the next section, we'll explore how building these connections can transform not just your strength, but your sense of purpose. Because the flame of resilience is brighter when shared. We explored the strength that comes from connection, the unseen power of walking beside others who understand your struggle. Now, let's look even deeper at how community can be the quiet bridge between despair and resilience. The scratches. The bruises. The silent mornings that feel hollow. They're not signs of weakness. They're the shared language of every soul that has ever dared to hope. Imagine a mother after childbirth, sleep-deprived, overwhelmed, unsure of herself. She questions her ability to be a good mother. Every cry feels like a test she's failing. Now picture this, every morning, she receives a simple text from a friend. "You're okay. Just one more day. One small step at a time." It's not a grand gesture. But it's enough to cut the weight she carries in half. In that moment, she remembers. She's not alone. And her strength, buried beneath exhaustion, starts to flicker again. Now picture a man, an entrepreneur, bankrupt, devastated, staring at the wreckage of his dreams. It's easy to spiral. Easy to quit. But what if he had just 2 or 3 people, each of whom had fallen before, standing beside him? A small mastermind group who've tasted failure, yet still rise? That's all it would take to remind him. You're not finished. Not yet. Or a student, crushed by the weight of a failed university entrance exam. Their self-worth in pieces. The future, a blur. But then, they find a group of peers who've been there. Who know the pain, but also know that this isn't the end, it's just a new chapter. In those moments, connection doesn't just inspire, it saves. And modern science backs this up. Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, found that one of the most powerful forces helping people overcome depression and sustain long-term optimism isn't self-help books or external success. It's meaningful human connection. It doesn't take a stadium of cheerleaders. Sometimes, all it takes is one person. One voice. One hand. One message of encouragement at the right moment. And if things feel heavy, too heavy, seek help. If that means therapy, reach for it. Not as a last resort. But as a deliberate act of courage. A bold decision to protect your inner world. As Stoics, we do not reject emotions. We don't pretend we're invincible. What Stoicism teaches is alignment, to recognize emotions, to respect them, and to train our reason to lead with wisdom. And yes, part of that wisdom is knowing when to ask for support. In doing so, we don't abandon Stoic strength. We embody it. Because connecting with a community isn't weakness, it's another form of turning the obstacle into the path. When your personal willpower falters, and someday it will, the presence of another person is not a crutch. It's a bridge. A bridge across the abyss of doubt, exhaustion, and isolation. Community doesn't erase hardship. It doesn't remove the mountain. But it gives you a reason to keep climbing, especially when your legs begin to shake. So the next time you feel like giving up, remember this. You're not just walking for yourself. You're walking for the people who believe in you. You're walking for the future soul who will hear your story and find strength in it. Because that's what you're doing right now. Writing your legacy, not in triumph, but in perseverance. Choosing connection is an act of rebellion against isolation, the quietest, most dangerous enemy in our darkest hours. Principle number 6, nurture hope and amor fati. In the previous part, we discovered how human connection acts as a bridge when personal strength runs low. Now, we shift to the invisible force that often makes that bridge possible, hope, and the even deeper Stoic principle of amor fati, the love of fate. When you've hit rock bottom. When every plan has collapsed. When it feels like the entire world has turned its back on you. What keeps you going isn't brute strength. It isn't intelligence or strategy. It's hope. Hope is fragile, but powerful. It doesn't roar. It whispers. It slips quietly into your darkest moments, like light finding its way through a crack in the wall. When your eyes are filled with tears. When your chest feels too heavy to carry your next breath. Hope leans in and says, there's still a path ahead. Just take one more step. But for the Stoics, hope alone wasn't the final answer. They went further. They didn't just endure hardship. They didn't merely tolerate pain. They did something radical. They loved it. This is the practice of amor fati, the love of fate. And it is not a motivational catchphrase. It is a way of living. A deep, courageous decision to embrace life, not only for its beauty but also for its brutality. To welcome every high and every low as a sacred piece of your story. Because when you truly love fate, adversity stops being your enemy. It becomes your teacher. Each hardship becomes a quiet question. What is this here to teach me? The philosopher Epictetus put it like this. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy. This isn't a call to kill your dreams. It's an invitation to see every event, every win, every setback, as a part of something much bigger than yourself. A mosaic in progress. And every piece, even the jagged ones, belongs. Because once you realize that today's failures are forging you for what comes next, you stop asking, why me? And start saying, thank you, for helping me grow. Look at Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychologist and author of Man's Search for Meaning. He survived the horrors of Auschwitz concentration camp. His family, gone. His career, erased. His future, shattered. And yet, he did not surrender. He chose a different path. He didn't place his hope in the idea that the camp gates would swing open the next day. That would have been naive. Instead, he placed his hope in something deeper. That even in a place designed to destroy the human spirit, a person still had the power to choose how they met their fate. Frankl comforted prisoners who were collapsing under the weight of despair. He shared his last piece of bread with others, even though he was starving himself. He closed his eyes and envisioned the lectures he would one day give, should he survive. And in doing so, he preserved something sacred, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. Human dignity. These were not random acts of survival. They were profound affirmations of meaning. Of choice. Of inner freedom in the face of unspeakable suffering. In the next section, we'll see how hope, when merged with courage, becomes a guiding force. Not to avoid suffering, but to face it with power, with purpose, and above all, with dignity. In the last part, we saw how Viktor Frankl turned unbearable suffering into an act of spiritual defiance, by choosing his response, even in a place designed to strip him of everything. That is the essence of amor fati, loving your fate not because it is gentle, but because it dares you to grow. Amor fati means embracing life exactly as it is, not just when it's kind, but even when it's cruel. It's not about passive acceptance. It's about active transformation. Viktor Frankl didn't love his fate because it was easy. He loved it because it gave him the opportunity to rise, even in its most brutal form. He didn't just survive Auschwitz, he made suffering a platform to assert one of the deepest truths humanity has ever known. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And this truth doesn't only apply in extreme conditions. It applies to all of us. A student who fails a university entrance exam has not reached the end of their story. They've simply arrived at a critical chapter, one that may lead them to something more aligned, more meaningful. When we begin to see failure as a natural part of growth, rather than a threat, we don't fall apart. We start building something stronger than any diploma could ever offer. Resilience. Grit. Inner strength. Hope doesn't blind you. It sharpens you. It doesn't pretend life is easy. In fact, it's because we know life is hard that hope becomes essential. Like a lantern in the dark, it doesn't erase the night, but it guides you through it. Amor fati elevates that hope. Because when you don't just wish for good outcomes. When you learn to love even the hard, painful, uncertain ones. You become unbeatable. Fear of failure fades. And in its place grows something else. Curiosity. Courage. The hunger to experience, to explore, to evolve. You stop asking, what if I fail? And you start asking, what might I learn if I do? That is real freedom. Not freedom from problems. But freedom from fear, helplessness, and the heavy grip of expectation. You become a partner with your fate, not its enemy. You stop resisting what life brings, and start dancing with it. And once you've nourished that kind of hope, once you've learned to embrace even the stumbles and setbacks, you're ready. You're ready for the final and deepest Stoic lesson. Memento mori. This principle doesn't simply remind you that death is inevitable. It urges you to live, truly live, while you still can. To cherish every breath, every step, every moment, because they're all fleeting. So let me ask you. You've learned to love fate. But have you learned to live fully within the limited time you've been given? Principle number 7, memento mori, live fully in the finite. There are moments when exhaustion grips you. When each day blurs into the next. When effort feels like it's going nowhere. And in those moments, it becomes so easy to say, why bother? But what if, instead of giving up, we leaned into life's impermanence, and used it to ignite purpose, clarity, and fierce appreciation? In the next section, we'll explore how remembering death is not morbid, but a call to live like never before. So far, we've explored how loving your fate can transform your pain. Now, we arrive at the Stoic principle that pulls everything into sharp focus, the reminder that our time is finite. And that, more than anything, is what makes life sacred. When the days blur together. When the fight feels too long, and the temptation is strong to simply let life push us forward, without resistance, without purpose. But if we can see through the fog of disappointment, something profound emerges. That strength has a name. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. Marcus Aurelius once wrote. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This isn't meant to cause fear. It's not a call to detach from life. It's a call to wake up, to see life clearly, and to feel how fragile, how urgent, and how precious every moment really is. Because once you fully understand that life can end at any time, you stop wasting it. Every choice becomes deliberate. Every word you speak carries weight. And every step forward becomes a reflection of your truest values. Imagine a young man, recovering in a hospital bed after a devastating accident. Just hours earlier, he believed he had endless tomorrows. Now, every breath, every heartbeat, feels like a miracle. When he finally gets back on his feet, he's no longer driven by vague ambitions. Instead, he's powered by a sharp, burning clarity. Live every hour as if it's the only one that matters. So he studies programming, not because he's chasing status, but because each line of code he writes says one thing. I am still alive. One more semicolon. One more idea. One more act of creation. Steve Jobs once shared that he looked to death to find courage. Each morning, he asked himself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And that question, that daily gaze into mortality, gave him the boldness to silence doubt, ignore ridicule, and pour his soul into building something that changed the world. He wasn't afraid of death. He used it to refine his priorities, to remove hesitation, and to fuel unwavering focus. And that is the spirit of Stoicism. Memento mori isn't about gloom. It's not about fearing the end. It's about burning brighter because of it. Because when you face the reality of death, of your limited time, something remarkable happens. All the fears you once thought were massive, they shrink. Failure, betrayal, disappointment, these are no longer mountains, but small stones on the path. And your actions? They begin to magnify. A single apology. A bold decision. A second attempt after a stumble. These become sacred. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's how we measure our lives. Not by the length of time we're given, but by how awake we become to the miracle of simply being here. So love more fiercely. Create with more urgency. Live more awake. And if you fall, and you will, don't sink into self-pity. Remember, that, too, is part of the story. Part of the sacred song you are still composing. No one escapes the end. But we do choose how we live before it comes. Let your days pass full and rich. Let your smallest actions carry the weight of intention. Whether it's hugging your child, signing that contract, or offering a genuine smile to a stranger. Everything becomes sacred under the light of mortality. So if today you're standing at the edge of giving up, pause. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And remember, you could leave life at any moment. If that's true, how will you choose to live today? Will you rise? Or will you collapse in regret? Memento mori. Not to darken your life, but to ignite, in every heartbeat, the brightest, most unbreakable flame within you. Because wanting to give up is not failure. It is a signal. It's a test. It's a moment. And you are standing at the doorway to strengthening your spirit. You now hold 7 principles, 7 timeless truths, to guide your way. If something is within your control, give it your whole heart. If it isn't, let it go, and smile, knowing it belongs to the universe, not to you. Write down a time when you almost gave up. Just a few lines. A memory. A scar that shaped you. Then, write one small action you commit to today, even if it's tiny. Because forward is forward. And today, you are still in the fight. And if you want to keep walking this path with us, this stoic journey toward strength, clarity, and purpose, subscribe. Leave your story in the comments. Join the community that trains the mind, walks through the storm, and chooses to live, on purpose, every single day. This is not the end. This is where it begins. Memento mori. Live wisely. Live fully.